In this video, I'm going to talk about chuck jaws. I'm going to show you a variety of chuck jaws and show you what they're especially good for. I'm going to actually demonstrate with wood on some of them. Most of what I'm going to say is going to apply to lots of different manufacturers' chuck jaws, but specifically I'm going to be using Record Power jaws because Record Power was kind enough to send me a complete set of their jaws to evaluate and use in this video. Hi y'all, my name's Mike Pease and I'm passionate about wood turning, and I'm here to share with you tips, tricks, and techniques to help you become a better wood turner. If this is something you're interested in, please consider hitting the subscribe button and the notification bell so you won't miss future videos. When I started turning about 12 years ago on a jet mini lathe, it came with a Teknatool Supernova chuck with about 6 sets of jaws, and frankly I didn't have a clue what they're for, and I invited a wood turner friend of mine over to help me sort it out. In looking at looking back on that and those jaws that individual had, I'm thinking he had more money than good sense. And I want to share some of this information with you to help you make some wise decisions on your chuck purchases. If you're a novice turner just getting started, file this video away and feel free to come back and visit it after you've had some experience and you're reaching that point of turning a wider variety of projects, or you're concentrating on large projects or smaller projects, in which the time will come when you'll want to consider adding to your supplementing your normal jaws with something different. Disclaimer: Record Power was kind enough to send me their full, complete, comprehensive set of jaws without cost for me to use in this video. Without that, I wouldn't be able to do this video, so I appreciate that from Record Power. I believe their chuck lineup will meet the needs of any owner of a Record Power SC3 or SC4 chuck. I did video reviews of both of those, and you'll find the link at the end of this video. But I also want to mention that these chucks are fully interchangeable with Sorby Patriot and Teknatool, which is a very nice feature. Sometimes cheaper, what I call second-tier chuck manufacturers will target the hobbyist wood turner with cheaper jaws, cheaper chucks that might come with several sets of jaws, and they look like they're throwing the jaws in for free, but there is no free lunch. You get what you pay for, and quality costs. Unfortunately, sometimes those jaw sets are all they're going to have. You won't have any other options. They might have a design the design of those particular jaws are not what you're going to need. They also may come with, say, serrated edges, and you've come to discover that you'd prefer to have a dovetail, but you might not have options. And they're typically cheaper because they have lower quality alloys and less quality control. And after a while, with lower quality alloys, the key moving parts, such as those rings or pinions, will start to wear, and you'll start getting a lot of slop. And I've heard this from a lot of hobbyist wood turners. If you don't use it much, they might do you just fine. In general, you use bigger jaws for bigger projects and smaller jaws for smaller projects, and there are specialty jaws for special projects. Usually there is an overlap, so there's an opportunity to use one set when another set might be better. If you find yourself turning a lot in a particular area, that's when you might want to consider getting that special set of jaws. So as I talk about these jaws, I want to share with you some of my thoughts and the features of these jaws based on my experience. Your experience may be completely different, as is the type of turning you're doing. So, like everything else, take this with a certain grain of salt and make sure you apply it to your situation. So this is the 100mm dovetail and deep gripper jaws by Record Power. It's virtually identical to the power grip jaws that Nova sells, and it'll handle this heavy block. And this block is approximately 8 inches across of wet wood, very, very heavy. You couldn't possibly hold this on your 50mm jaw set. You'll notice though, to get that secure hold, you've got to make a deeper tenon, and it also has a dovetail at the end here. So I've cut a dovetail and had a longer extension on this spigot, so you got some real strength here from this longer. Notice though, I don't have it bottom out. Otherwise, that would cause that would be a dangerous way to chuck this thing, because any leverage off the bottom would have a tendency to pull this out under stress. Because of these deep 100mm depth, you can actually grip squares with the corners between the chuck jaws, as long as it doesn't extend too far out. It's not my preferred way of chucking. I prefer to tenon, but it's faster to actually chuck it like this, put it round the end off, make it round, put a tenon on it. It would be, and then reverse it, than it would be to actually turn it round between centers and put a tenon on it. These jaws are mounted on the SC4, and one of the things that I really like about the SC4 is it comes with this wrench. If it ever gets stuck a little bit, boy, you just give it a pop and it comes right loose, which is very handy. So here are the 100mm gripper jaws on the SC4, and I contrast those with the larger 130mm jaws on the SC3. And incidentally, they measure the outside diameter with it opened about 1/8 of an inch, because that's the optimum size where you get a perfect circle. Because when these are machined on a CNC machine, they then come along and cut these into quarters, so you remove a little bit of steel. So that was the original circle. So this is 130mm, this is 100mm. Now, for an awful lot of applications, these are roughly comparable because they're both fairly large size chucks, but you can see this one would hold that very heavy longer blank with a longer tenon than this one would, even though this is a larger chuck, because the depth is not that deep. On the other hand, if we're dealing with large bowls, for example, either one of these chucks would safely hold this 16-inch bowl or this 14-inch rough platter. However, if you're dealing with primarily large items like those bowls and platters, this is probably the stronger chuck because it's got a longer gripping area on the inside and the outside. On the other hand, although this is going to be very good for large stuff, because of the deeper jaws, it provides you some additional functionality. Although technically, because it'll hold a smaller tenon and a smaller recess, it probably is not quite as strong as the very large items. This one you should be able to go up to a 30-inch platter, but they will both hold very large stock that you couldn't possibly safely hold on your 50mm jaws. The next set of jaws I want to talk about is 75mm heavy bowl and gripper jaws. I've mounted a couple of these. This is the 130mm, just to contrast it, and this is with the 1-inch deep gripper jaws we looked at, and then I've shown the standard jaws. You can see with the 75mm, they're very, very beefy. They have the screw right through the middle that gives it extraordinary strength. And as we know, most of our chucking power comes from the flat, from the bowl registering against this surface. And this is a very wide surface, much stronger than this. Now, in terms of a spigot, it'll grab a spigot very similar to the standard jaws, but in expansion mode, it'll go about 30mm, more than an inch larger, so you've got a very, very strong hold. So if you're doing a lot of bowls in the 10 to, I'd say, maybe 16-inch range, this is an excellent choice. You can also see it's dovetailed, but it's got serrations down here, so similar to the way we held that great big blank here, if you were doing a smaller hollow form or a vase or something, you could use a longer tenon and you could get a very, very strong grip with these. Just not quite as strong as you could with this larger gripper set. So a lot of it really depends on what do you do most, and there's always going to be some compromise. Now we're going to look at the long nose jaws. These are what I'd call a special purpose chuck. They're very deep. It's got several nice capabilities. One is you can put a very deep tin in it. So if you turn a lot of long pieces of green wood, maybe you're turning green goblets or something of that nature, this works great because it has with the serrations and a long tenon, you can get a very tenacious grip on that. But the main purpose, I would say, is primarily because of the length of the jaws, is being able to get a piece of work away from the spinning chuck. Let's say we're working on the top of this box lid. This might be an example. You could actually, you could work on this area here without worrying about getting into the chuck body. Another example might be if you're working on a a bowl where you're chucking the inside, or rather you're working it from this way. Let's do it this way. You've got more room to get behind the bowl to make this cut than you would with a normal set of jaws. So if that's the type of cut and the way you approach a bowl, this could be very handy. Frankly, I have not found, for me personally, this hasn't been as useful a chuck, and I had a set of Teknatool long-nosed jaws that are virtually identical for years. I've used it a few times and they've come in handy, but it's not one that I use a great deal. Okay, here's the profile of the standard 50mm jaws that come with the SC3 and SC4, and you can see it's got a very miniature dovetail, but we don't even call it a dovetail. You can call it a groove, you can call it a hawk beak, but you make a parallel tenon from here down is perpendicular to the face of the jaws, and it bites into it. It leaves very little marking, and it's an excellent hold. The outside is a true dovetail, and the outside, that's a 79.5 degree dovetail on the outside. When it comes to the capacity of this chuck, I would say I would not go more than 10 inches, and even that might be pushing it. You can go larger, but you start increasing problems through vibration, chatter. But worse than that, it starts becoming an increasingly dangerous proposition. You should turn 10 inches and larger with larger bowls, larger jaws. Here's the largest long blank the 50mm jaws should hold, and that's one about 6 inches long, and it's about 4 inches in diameter. Safety with chucking and jaws is based on about 4 factors. Number one, making sure you have a quality tenon that's appropriate to the jaws, whether it's a dovetail or whether it's a straight. Recess, similar. You want to match the recess to the angle of the outside of your jaws. The other factor is how large is the wood compared to the chuck and the jaws, and then certainly the third factor is how fast you're turning. And here's how that size-wise that blank compares to that 10-inch bowl. Leverage. There's 2 different kinds of leverages. Leverages out to the side and leverages straight out. So here's the 4-inch diameter blank we just took out of the 50mm jaws, and we compare that to the 8-inch diameter and 8 inches long. Actually, this could have gone out to 10 inches. That could safely be held on those 100mm deep gripper jaws. Okay, these are the 35mm standard jaws, and I think these are going to be my new favorites. I turn a lot of small stuff, and the beauty of this is it uses the same style hawk beak, that very tiny miniature dovetail, for grasping a tenon. And it grasps it very strongly. On the outside, it's got a true dovetail, so it's great if you're turning little small bowls with recesses or tenons or little saucers, but I'll probably use it more on ornaments and little things of that nature. Anytime I'm doing a smaller spindle project, and say about 2 inches, that I might be able to handle with the normal jaws, but if it's in the 1 5/8, 1 3/8 range, this is going to be the perfect jaw set for me. These are the pen jaws. They excel for drilling in pen blanks. They've got a very strong hole because they're long. They've got 2 screws in it. I don't turn many pen blanks, but I do occasionally turn a fan or a lamp pull. So you make a little starter hole, make a little divot, and then I use a hand drill for these. And they're perfect because they hold a piece long, and you can flip them around and still drill exactly down center with milled squares. I've also used pen jaws to hold small round blanks, and they do fine, turning perches or beaks for birds or something similar to that. But frankly, the next pair of jaws works better, and that's the pin jaws, P-I-N. I wanted to show these 2 jaws side by side because there are some real similarities. There's the mini spigot jaws, and the pin jaws. Now, the outer diameter, these are great for, and I'll go into a little more detail showing you actual chucking wood, but they go into the same size hole to hold something. This has a 13 millimeter bore for holding something. It's got a smooth on the inside, and this is 9 millimeters, so this might be suitable for a little larger, some larger objects to grasp. This works great for like bobbins and some other small items. These are used for are frequently used for folks that makes pepper mills because they give a very strong hold. These serrations might leave some minor markings, but they work fine on something like a pepper mill where the markings aren't going to show. The pin jaws are slightly longer. Both of them have a dovetail, so you could use them for recesses on small objects like small bowls. A difference between the two is this uses 1 screw per chuck. This one uses 2, which is why you have this indentation on each side. So this gives it a very, very strong hold. I'm not sure that there's a significant difference for what you're going to be using these for, whether you have a one or two. The pin jaws can come in handy for several different things. Number one, if you're turning smaller objects in the 9 millimeter plus, or say in the 3/8 to a 1/2 inch range, this makes a very nice set of jaws. This works actually better than the pin jaws because it's less likely to mar it. I would use these in many instances where I'm currently using a collet chuck, because this is adjustable, so it'll be easier to use, yet you still got a long set of jaws that is going to minimize the marking. One of the things I'd point out on this set of jaws is it's got a square shoulder, unlike some of its competitors that might be interchangeable with this, that have rounded shoulders in here. And the beauty of that is you can use this type of chuck in lieu of what I frequently use, a woodworm screw, because I didn't have this chuck before. You can actually drill a 1/8 inch hole in your bowl blank, slide this on flat against the edge, and tighten it up. It's a very fast method of securing a bowl blank by drilling that 1/8 inch hole, because so if you're a production bowl turner, it's easier to mount and dismount than the woodworm screw, is why it makes it easy. It also works very well if you're doing a natural edge bowl where the bark is going to be on this side, because it gives you a very, very secure hold. As I mentioned, I believe I mentioned before, this is also a great chuck internally for if you're making pepper mills, something long like this. And if you turn a lot of small boxes, like I do, for example, a chuck like this is not a bad quick and dirty option for reverse chucking to finish off. Of course, you got to be very careful and not to blow it out. But the fact that it's very long, it's going to tighten expand on the back, so it's going to be safer than if you were doing it out here on the edge. And it doesn't make a difference whether you're doing the lid or whether you were doing the bottom. You've got that same option for have a very secure grasp and running true to finish off the top of the bottom. Now we're going to look at the mini spigot mounted, and I'm using a spindle adapter to take my 1 1/4 inch spindle thread down to the 1 inch to match this SC3, which makes it, you could buy it for a smaller lathe, but use it as a second chuck, for example, on a larger lathe with a spindle adapter. Now, the outside exterior, again, this would work fine on this bowl blank as well as the others. It has the same outside. A 1 1/8 inch hole works just fine. It's got a slightly larger bore, which makes it suitable for slightly larger wooden blanks. You could use this for rounding off smaller squares, although I think the pen jaws would be more optimum for that. But again, we talked about compromise. This is one way to do it, as long as the blank is not too large. And again, this is a very strong set of jaws because it uses 2 screws to fasten each jaw. Quickly touch on faceplate rings. This is the one that comes with it. So if you're doing price shopping, keep in mind that you're getting one of these free or a faceplate ring included with the price of either chuck. And I just want to point out, this is the 3.5 inch, and it's actually larger than the one that came with my Powermatic. Faceplate rings are great for doing very, very large pieces of wood. They're easier to use a faceplate ring actually than a full faceplate, because if it's a very large block where you're struggling to get it up and on the lathe threaded, it's just easier to lift up a very large block. This is not very large, but an example, have the thing sized properly and it'll just slip right on, and then after that it'll take the weight and you can go ahead and tighten it up. Now, as an additional accessory, they've got a huge 5 inch, which is just massive. This is a big chunk of steel, and this is the best way for doing very, very large blanks, hollow forms, especially for initial roughing. That brings us to what Record Power calls remounting jaws, or what most other manufacturers commonly call cold jaws. They've got 2 sets, a smaller one for mini lathes, and then a larger one with some more elaborate bumpers. I'm going to cover the topic of these jaws in a future video where I do the whole topic of how do you reverse a bowl and finish off the bottom, because there's other alternatives besides cold jaws, but I'll cover these then. Another jaw option I'll just mention, plastic soft jaws. Not every manufacturer has them. Generally second tier chuck manufacturers such as Grizzly or Barracuda don't have these in an option. Neither does Vicmark, and they're certainly a top of the line chuck manufacturer, but these nylon jaws are easily customizable for your specialized chucking needs, and I plan to do a future video on using these for making a custom set of jaws from this versatile set. I can't emphasize strongly enough how important it is to read, understand, and follow through on the manufacturer's guidelines on how to use their equipment. This is especially important on chucking. Don't just wing it. See exactly what they say. As an example, on all these various jaws that we've looked at, the dovetails are not all the same. They vary from on the inside dovetail for grasping a tenon, varies from 61 to 80 degrees on these chucks that I've shown you, and on the outside from 75 to 82 degrees. So it makes a difference. You're going to size your dovetail based on your particular jaw set. I welcome any comments or questions you have. Leave them below. I especially want to hear from you first-time visitors. Y'all stay safe. Come on back here.